Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The new year is almost upon us and we still really have no idea what OpTic's starting roster is going to be heading into the Major 2 qualifiers. Huke is now maybe marginally less likely today than it was yesterday, as we'll see in the coming minutes, but also after the Crim6 informal and even calmer discussions over the last few days, is there any chance that another veteran in Clayster returns to OpTic before the end of the season? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. Firstly, just quickly from Spart. Now, I don't think that this means by any means that he's going to be joining the London Royal Ravens, but there is something to say on Ravens here in a second, just because they, well, we don't know what their roster is going to be exactly. We have some rumours as to what it might be. Whether they reconfirm a seam to be starting for them going into Major 2 is quite a big deal, just because there were some rumours that a seam was going to be acquired by Surge if Pred went to OpTic, and then we thought, well, okay, if a seam's up for grabs, could OpTic go and get him as well? Now, this from Spart, just because he's wearing some London colours and he puts the kind of bird here in the tweet, doesn't necessarily mean anything. The rumour has it, and understandably, he's going to be on the Los Angeles Guerrillas Academy for now. Like, I mean, look, he's signed for 3 years as basically a bench player unless they want to bring him back up to the starting team if their new team sucks, which, you know, there's a decent chance of. Now, before we talk about the London situation, wanted to mention Chino. Really sad news, I thought, last night, as Chino describes it. Hey guys, just wanted to put a couple of things out there to say I'm officially done competing. I took a chance this year trying to compete and see if I could keep up financially, but it's just not possible for me without a salary. And this is the difficult thing about not just the Pro League being 12 teams, but also the Challenger scene having, you know, let's just say questionable support over the last few years. There are some Challenger players that can get by on a salary if they're an Academy player, but apart from that, there's nothing you can really do nowadays. The prize money isn't big enough down there to maintain yourself off just that, so either you're, you know, good enough or get a lucky enough opportunity to sign for a team and an organisation in Tier 2 that will pay you something, even though is there any rate of return for the organisations? Probably not right now. Or you get an academy spot, which there aren't too many academies, right? LAG have one, Minnesota have one, but you know, outside of that, there isn't much investment. I do think the scene would be much better off if the CDL said, look, hey, all the pro teams, you are obliged to field an academy roster, and you don't have to pay them a crazy salary, but you've just got to pay something that maybe can keep their living expenses ticking over. Because right now, the substitute salary is obviously minimum mandated 50 grand or just over 50 grand now. What if you said, all right, you've got to spend 80 grand on an entire academy team, you pay 20 grand each, and look, okay, it's not a great living wage or anything, but it's enough to keep these guys ticking over and, you know, trying to make it. And if they get to the pro team, then all of a sudden things are changing around. So I do think that the CDL needs to think about how it deals with challenges, because players like Chino being forced to retire is not what we want to see, right? If you guys are new to the scene, Chino, a legend for many years in Call of Duty, even as Doug says, seeing a player like Cheen being forced out to retire is really sad. He should be competing at the highest level, but he can't because we've got 12 teams in the league. And he has been in the CDL recently, right? If we have a look back at his kind of COD game PG here, this is way back in the Black Ops 2 days, even through to Ghost when he was a notable player. Then Advanced Warfare, he started making waves. Certainly in Black Ops 3 on that Dream Team roster that came second at the Stage 2 players with Diabolic, Sender and Killer. What a crazy team that was. And then it really was World War 2 where Chino started to make a real name for himself as being one of the dominant forces in the early part of that game. He won back-to-back events on Team Caliber at Dallas and New Orleans with Theory, Accuracy and Kenny, and then after that it didn't go so well for him. Then he was on Envy for a little bit, then he switched around a few times. He was actually the bench player for the OpTic Gaming Los Angeles roster in Modern Warfare, right, and you know, was actually subbed into that team. And then in Cold War he came in for the Los Angeles Guerrillas, and the LAG thing was strange to me just because I thought it was a decent idea bringing Cheen, and I actually thought he looked pretty damn good when he was in the LAG starting roster, but then they benched him for Mental, like and you know, Mental, like Gears of War guy, legend of that scene, but didn't work in Call of Duty, and he got benched for him, and I was like, well, what are they thinking here really with Chino? They kind of screwed him over, and he hasn't got a good chance since then. So yeah, really unfortunate stuff, to be honest, that Chino's going to be forced out to retire here. It's another sad day for Call of Duty, but you know, probably expected given the trajectories of the last couple of years of some of the players, but also the way the Challenger scene is run. Let's talk further about the Challenger scene with this new roster, which to me is hilarious. So Hollow, who actually was on also the OpTic Gaming Los Angeles team a couple of years ago, with Mock, Venom, and also Paul X, and this to me is just hilarious, right? So Decimate GG, this is the organisation that Parasite was coaching for, no longer coaching them, of course. He's actually playing nowadays again, but and he wasn't getting paid for that anyway. But yeah, so Venom, of course, from the Los Angeles Thieves days, as with Paul X, of course, from that season with London, he is going to be stepping into this roster. Of course, you know, part of that Westar team back in the Cold War days that was dominating everything in challenges at the start of that year. But the hilarious thing is to me that Paul X hasn't even been been dropped by London yet. They haven't confirmed that he's been dropped or anything, but yet Decimate GG still confirmed that poorlex is going to be one of their players. So I guess London are waiting on some announcement video or whatever, but you know, nonetheless, poorlex is dropped, and these guys just confirmed it straight up, and obviously haven't deleted this tweet either. So kind of a crazy storyline. So what do we think is going to happen with London? Is it going to be a simple minus poorlex plus scraps, which is the current rumor, with Nasty, aSeam, and Zero staying? I think you know, that's very similar to the FaZe clan team of Black Ops 4 that did rather well. That had Zuma there in addition. Of course, it was 5v5 in that game, but pretty similar set of players, to be honest. And nowadays, it's, you know, pretty similar story repeating itself on the London Royal Ravens. Whether there's any additional changes, whether aSeam is acquirable for any teams, that is still a big question that I want to see an answer to. Now, quickly on LAG, we saw this roster yesterday: Arcitys, Assault, Exceed, and Thieves. I don't know if this AR duo is set in stone, but the key point to mention is that Exceed and Thieves on the SMGs, for now, that does seem to be the case, because Octane on stream actually mentions, and I think they scrims them right behind the scenes, and he was talking all this about basically, oh, you know, they're trying to deceive me, and basically just, you know, hinting towards the fact that Thieves is there, and also saying that they exceeded expectations. So hinting that indeed it was Exceed and Thieves in that scrim, which is important because it means there was no Neptune, it means there was no Huke, and the current rumor is Huke isn't on their Los Angeles Guerrillas Academy. So where is Huke off to in all of this stuff? As we talked about yesterday, there's a solid chance that maybe he ends up on the OpTic Texas team. Of course, they're reuniting the Zeo trio with Rambo from back in the day, makes a fair bit of sense. Yes, it doesn't solve all their issues. I think they do, you know, some of the issues that they've had with Dashy will get resolved, but Huke has his own set of issues as well. Maybe isn't the player that I would be targeting in an ideal world, but it might be happening. Now, we also wonder where Dashy is going. He was kind of hinting about, or I think even someone said in the background he's going to join Florida. And as we said yesterday, Florida is probably a team he could join, but does he want to join Florida? That's a big question. I think he'd probably prefer to stay on the bench until after Major 2, where he might have more options, because I imagine a good few teams are going to look at changes after Major 2. And if Dashy's a free agent, then he is a tough candidate to turn down. Let's talk about the OpTic thing in more detail then. So a funny clip here from Scump actually, where he talks about aBeZy and saying that he's put in a specific note to say don't let aBeZy ever join OpTic. I'm sure he's joking around here, but nonetheless it's quite clear that FaZe aren't making any changes right now. And maybe, you know, Scump does have some thoughts on which players he wants to replace him after he retires at the end of the season, and which players he doesn't want to, just because we've heard stories of makes and the like, and he's saying, look, when Scump retires, you've got to try and break up the tiny terrors. Whether that actually happens, whether OpTic could get an aBeZy or a Simp or whatever if they even wanted to, especially if they're going to try and get Pred at the end of the year, maybe not, but nonetheless pretty spicy from Scump. And also this from Benjay Naseem. I wanted to share what he has to say on the Huke situation, saying that from his perspective, there is some legitimacy to this, i.e. the move makes sense from a few perspectives, given the options that OpTic have left. But there's nothing he can verify about this. All the sources he's talked to don't believe that this is actually in consideration right now, or at least he hasn't heard anything of the like. But then again, OpTic have been pretty good at keeping their rumors under wraps the last couple of weeks.
You can get down with aBeZy going to OpTic. See, I don't want him on the team after I'm done. He's the only one that's in the hat right now, just aBeZy. I don't want him on the team. That little. Oh, you guys like that one? I'm just kidding, guys. Abe's a great guy. Love that guy. Love that guy.
So I think people are speculating, oh, does that mean that Huke is coming to OpTic? I actually kind of see some validity in this rumor. Now, I want to really put like a disclaimer. I have not heard someone on record say to me, hey, like OpTic seriously thinking about this player. They've contacted LAG. None of that. This is pure conjecture right now. As soon as I hear that, I'll let you guys know, but this is pure sort of like kind of thinking through this process of all the remaining options for OpTic. It's a low risk, high reward potential play, the high reward being like he joins and he's just back to that Kylo form that we remember from a couple of years ago. But if it doesn't work out and they need to make changes after Major 2, or, you know,
So what do you guys think about the Huke situation, right? And as I said the other day, right, when we were talking about the Beans thing, that the more players are baiting about something, the less likely it actually is to happen. So just because iLLeY actually tweeted out the Zeo thing, pretty much like very clearly implying the return of Huke to the OpTic team, then to me it reduces the likelihood of that actually happening. As Ben says there, right, okay, he's heard that this might be a possibility, but from the OpTic side or from any leaks and sources he's heard, he hasn't heard anything that indicates this is actually going to happen. So it's quite interesting interesting because the early rumors about Pred and Arcitys, they seem to be coming from the OpTic camp, i.e. they wanted Pred, but or they wanted Arcitys, but the teams couldn't come to an arrangement that would work from the organizational perspective. And now we're hearing that maybe OpTic don't even want a Huke. But then again, who else do they get, right, if the situation is as it currently stands? And just to mention this, if you guys didn't stay around to the end of yesterday's video, we're getting so many subs on that as well. So thank you so much for all the support over the last few days. It's been absolutely phenomenal. But I've already mentioned that for whatever reason, he's not expecting OpTic Huke to be the case. Whether this guy's going to go to Halo or something, I don't know what the plan is going to be. But I mean, look, if he's not on the LAG starting roster and he's not on their academy roster, then where is Huke going to go? Are there other teams making changes that would want to get him? I don't know. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned. But a couple of reasons maybe stating now that Huke might not be as likely as we thought it could have been yesterday. But then again, if they don't get Huke, like, what do they actually do? It's very difficult to see where their options come from. So then the question arises to me about what happens in the AR position. We know that, at least if I was the general manager, I would get maybe a Seam right now, given the options. In an ideal world, I get Pred, right? Like if I was Rambo, if I was the GM of OpTic, I would put Scump to the flex, no brainer, keep Shotzzy where he is. I'd get Pred, obviously fairy tale world we're living in, but I'd get Pred, pair him with Shotzzy. They'd make it work. They're just too good not to. Scump as my flex, and then I'd get a veteran AR leadership guy like a Slasher probably. That's what I'd do. But fact of the matter is, you can't do that. You're not going to get Slasher, not going to get Pred right now. So you've got to cut your losses and admit, you know what, you're not going to build a super team. You're going to try and build a team that can win at least one event and have a hot run at some point, and maybe hopefully that event can be the World Championships. So in order to achieve that, I think of the options right now, I'd probably try and get a Seam, and then I'd think about what I do with my AR situation. I might have iLLeY and Scump kind of run those both roles for now, and if that doesn't work out, try and replace iLLeY with someone after Major 2 potentially. Now, Dashy, I think, has got to be gone. I think bringing him back is just a recipe for disaster waiting to happen, and this is the Clayster question, and people have been talking about this last night. Zuma was discussing it on stream, the possibility of down the line a Clayster Dashy trade. Now, this is a pretty out there suggestion, but in fairness, it's not as out there as the suggestions the last few days that they're going to bring back Karma, they're going to bring back Crimsix, they're going to bring back Formal, right? Clayster is another player in that category, veteran player, played for OpTic in the past, but he's actually playing it right now in the CDL at still a high level, had a good result with Vegas at the Major 1, right? Top 6 performance. Yes, his KD numbers weren't crazy, but this guy knows how to win. This guy knows how to build a team that can achieve something. And look, Vegas or Paris as they were last year, absolutely terrible. Clayster comes in, all of a sudden, a pretty similar team in terms of raw skill, is having good results, upsetting top teams, and, you know, placing top 6 and respectable results at majors. That is the Clayster factor. So some of you guys watching now will probably have been watching when Clay was on OpTic, and this was a legendary team from the X Games several years ago now. And look, the Clay return to OpTic would be a crazy storyline, but nonetheless, I do believe that Clayster has many aspects of his character that would be helpful to a team like OpTic. I do believe that since Crimsix has gone and since Formal has gone from the OpTic team, they've lost some degree of cutting edge that I think they probably need to try and find back. And they probably would get that with some sort of change in the AR position. Now, whether Dashy could go the other way, we saw yesterday he was talking about, you know, TJ and ProLoot and these guys, and maybe that's actually a solid roster. Now, it's also clear to mention here that there's no way, I believe, that Clay and Dashy would ever team up together. This was one of the big dramas at the start of the Cold War season when, you know, Clayster was basically roasting Dashy and saying that either he just plays for kills or he gets benched. And I mean, you know, what situation do we find ourselves in yet again? And even, you know, Dashy clapped back to him at the time saying, you know, I'm so excited to see what you can do this year with no Zeo or Tiny Terrors. And I'm pretty sure Clay and New York Subliners got the better of OpTic at least a few times that season, and then Clay even came back with this from the Black Ops 4 World Championship. So these guys haven't had the best of relationships, let's say, over the last couple of years. So I doubt there's a world in which, let's say, Temp goes to OpTic and Dashy goes the other way and it's a Clay Dashy duo. It's more than likely, if this is going to happen, it's Clay going that way and Dashy going the other way. Now, this is not something I would expect to happen now, if it would happen at all, but given Clayster's history with potentially iLLeY, or certainly with Shotzzy and also with Rambo on the Dallas Empire days, it might also make sense to reform part of that squad. Now, I believe that Clay has been scrimming with the Vegas guys over the last couple of days, so I don't imagine that, you know, I think for now it's set in stone and Clay's going to stay at Vegas unless there's a last minute thing that OpTic do. But maybe after Major 2, right, if OpTic is still struggling, at least Clayster is an attainable option. Arcitys is not attainable. Los Angeles Guerrillas aren't going to sell him. Clayster plays for Vegas, right? They're going to take a buyout for him more than likely. Okay, they might ask for a bit much, but it's not going to be as much as some of these other teams are asking. So if Scump wants to do it, if the team wants to do it, that's at least an attainable option they might go with, especially if they can send Dashy the other way, which is a possibility given, you know, his relationship with ProLoot and TJ and stuff like this over over the last several years. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.